Welcome to another episode of the MMA Lockcast. I'm your host, Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on Twitter at MMALOTN. This week we're going over UFC Vegas 10, headlined by Michelle Waterson and Angela Hill. As we all know, Thiago Santos was supposed to fight Glover Teixeira here. However, Glover Teixeira tests positive for COVID-19 and they pushed that fight back to October 3rd. So here we are with a 5-rounder now between Angela Hill and Michelle Waterson. Intriguing fight. Before we get into that, let's do a quick betting recap of the last event, UFC Vegas 9, where we had a ton of fights fucking fall out, and it was very, very unfortunate. So we had my lock of the night play, Alexander Romanov and Marcos Rogerio de Lima to go under 1.5 rounds. We had minus 150, minus 149. That's a push. De Lima test positive for COVID. That fight's off. Thiago Moises. Another fight we had 1.5 units, I believe, at minus 134. He tests positive the day of. That fight gets pulled as well, too. And, Carol Hosa. We had 2 units on her at minus 140 something. I can't remember the exact number there. But she has weight cutting issues the day before. She gets pulled. So 3 fuck yous, pretty much, right off the bat. So we end up only having three bets for the card. All of them dog of the night plays, and we go 1-3 on it to still only be down minus 0.8 units. So all in all, not too bad. Let's go over those real quick. We had 1 unit on Cole Smith at plus 206. I thought that Cole was going to be able to at least steal 2 of those rounds, second and third. He steals the third round. Second round, Hunter Azaitar just fucking, lands pretty much no damage in that round, but just controls Cole Smith the entire time. Cole did decent work defending, but Azaitar did enough in that first and second round to get the judges nod. I was happy with the plus 206 on Cole Smith because that fight did play out closer than the line had indicated. Next up, we had Montero De La Rosa, 1.5 units at plus 154. De La Rosa kind of pulled a Cormier on me. You know what I mean? She did not initiate or engage or create grappling opportunities as much as I expected her to. And Araujo looked great. She battered her up. She landed good shots. De La Rosa just could not close the distance well enough or even get this fight to the ground or even get them into positions that she could potentially win this fight. So good on Viviane Araujo to get that. That's minus 1.5 units there. And then our only cash of the night was OSP, 1.5 units at plus 113. We cashed for plus 1.7 units. A solid win for OSP there. I still don't understand the love that people had on Alonzo Menafield, especially my man Ken Flo on the Anakin Flooring podcast, picking Menafield to win that fight via decision. The fuck, Kenny? What the fuck? You even looking at or even researching any of these fights? I don't get it. But OSP comes through kind of easily. I did bet the KO prop at plus 850 as well. And I'll be the first one to tell you that I thought it was going to be by OSP getting Alonzo Menafield down, working for a submission, not really getting the submission, but then, getting the back of Menafield and just pounding him out that way. But I'll take the left hook counter regardless. That deads Alonzo Menafield, and that catches OSP for me. Wish I went a little bit deeper on that one too, because I was very, very, I thought he was my best dog of the night play, so I probably should have gone 2 or 2.5 units there, and we probably would have ended up in the slight green. Regardless, we're only minus 0.8 units. I'm okay to take that small of a loss. I'm still considering myself on a bit of a win streak just because there was no lock of the night play on that card. So I'm still on paid picks. I apologize, but then again, for $5 or $10 a month, you guys really gonna complain considering with the fucking run that I'm on and the reasons I've been giving you guys? Just saying. All right. Small loss on UFC Vegas 9, but that brings us to UFC Vegas 10. Decent card overall. A lot of people are shitting on this card, but if you truly look at the each one of these fighters and how they match up with their opponents, we know we're going to get a bunch of fireworks in this event. So I'm excited for it. Match Schnell versus Tyson Nam is probably one of the higher, more anticipated fights of the weekend for me. I don't really get into the Bellator card this weekend, but I'm really looking forward to Patchy Mix against Juan Archuleta as well. That should be a great fight. Patchy just looks fucking unstoppable. 13-0, comes in as a decent favorite here as well too. But yeah, I will let you guys know already. I do like Patchy Mix. I think he's just going to be too overwhelming for Juan Archuleta here, and we'll see him get probably a third or fourth round submission stoppage. Before I do get into the breakdowns, though, two things I want to address. First of all, the Patreon. If you guys haven't hit up the Patreon yet, we hit a huge milestone over there, 100 patrons. I appreciate each and every one of you. $5 a month, you guys get early access to the breakdowns as I record them, and you guys also get a best bets and props article, which details, obviously, very straightforward, the best bet. That's usually either money line or the over-under, or the best prop as well, which I find, whichever is the best prop value for each fight as well. A lot of people on the Patreon pretty much look forward to that every single week, and I am dropping it now pretty much after every weigh-in, so I'm not wasting my time writing up on fights that don't ever end up happening, even though there are fights that get canceled on fight day, but can't do anything about that. So make sure you guys check that out. That's the best way to support your boy. I'm getting damn near close to finally fucking, doing this shit full time. And I got to give a lot of thanks to a lot of people that are on the Patreon, and especially to the people that are hopping over to the $10 a month one, just to throw your boy a little extra couple bucks to make it a little bit easier. So appreciate you guys checking that out. The link is in the description below. Make sure you guys go click on that and check it out and see what I have to offer there. And then secondly, I'm going to be doing another sweater draw. So I did a sweater draw, not the one that I'm currently wearing, but you will see it in the breakdowns that are coming up in this podcast. If you're watching the YouTube version, it's the MMA Lock of the Night, or MMA LOTN versus the Bookies hoodies. We have a black and a gray one that I'm giving away. I already gave one, giving two away on the Patreon for the Patreon members, but I will do one for the podcast listeners as well too. So it's very simple. If you're listening on the audio platforms, you're going to need to hop over to the YouTube video and just comment. All you have to do is comment about your picks for the night. You have to give a pick for every single fight on the card. Pick from the main event all the way down to the first fight. I don't need method of victory. I don't need any of that shit. Just who you think is going to win. And then at the end of the event, I'll tally it up. If we have a tie, I'll figure out a way to work out the tie, but we're only going to have one winner. And unfortunately, it's only a large. I have a black large and a gray large as well too. So it's going to come down to one of those. So if you don't wear a large, maybe you can still win it and give it to somebody or something like that. But yeah, so we're doing the sweater contest. Once again, just comment below on the YouTube channel every pick that you have for this upcoming UFC Vegas 10 card, and I'll tally it up and get in contact with whoever the winners are, and then work out that tiebreaker if there is a tiebreaker of any sort. So appreciate you guys entering the contest. We had a lot of good feedback on the Patreon contest as well too, so I thought I'd give the next opportunity to the podcast listeners, because you guys fucking make all this worth it. So yeah, that's the sweater contest. Very simple. All right, let's get into the breakdowns, since that's what you guys are here for, and hopefully I can sway you guys on some of these fights, and maybe we'll see if you guys can figure out which fights I'm betting on. And if you really want to find out which fights I'm betting on, hit the Patreon. I've already told you guys about that. All right, let's get into the breakdowns. Sabina Mazo versus Justine Kish. We got minus 250 on Sabina and plus 210 on Justine Kish. Let's start off with Sabina Mazo. She's 8-1. Her only loss was her UFC debut to Marina Moroz in a very close fight where she tried to put the pedal into the gas in that in the third round, but it was a little bit too late for her. Moroz ends up getting the victory there. She comes back and gets a victory over Shana Dobson and over JJ Aldrich. The Aldrich one was questionable. I thought that JJ Aldrich did enough to win the first two rounds. Obviously, the first round was enticing enough. The second round, I think, like the last maybe 45 seconds to a minute of that round really swayed the judges. Mazo landed a pretty good head kick. She had a little bit of success in that clinch, but for the majority of that round, JJ Aldrich did a really good job of closing the distance and landing her own shots. She was quicker to the punch. She covered the distance very well. And then obviously in that third round, Sabina Mazo did a really good job in terms of, once again, putting the pedal to the metal and she pulled away a little bit in that third round. But in my opinion, that was a bit of a poor decision. So unfortunate loss for JJ Aldrich there. But Sabina Mazo is now on a 2-fight winning streak, and she comes into this fight as a sizable favorite over Justine Kish, which I don't think is that justifiable. Let's not forget that when she was going in to fight Shanna Dobson, she went in as a minus 145 favorite. Here she is against Justine Kish, who, in my opinion, I rate much higher than Shanna Dobson. She comes in as a minus 250 favorite. The line is slowly starting to close. She was minus 285. A lot of people are starting to get on the tape, in my opinion, and saying that this fight could play out a lot closer than a minus 250 would say. With that said, we know Sabina Mazo's game. She likes to fight long. She does have a little bit of issues sometimes when fighters do close the distance and come forward with punches. She has a little bit of trouble with leg kicks as well too. But her own kicking game is very good. Her front kick. From her lead leg is very, very deceptive. She doesn't really have much of a wind-up on it, so you don't really know if it's going to the leg, to the body, or to the head. We saw her hurt Shanna Dobson early in that fight with the beautiful leg kick to the body, just because Shanna Dobson, in my opinion, just didn't see it or didn't think it was coming there. More so thought it was probably coming to the legs. But yeah, she's deceptive with her striking. She is long. She has better kicks than she has punches, in my opinion. Her jab would do her very well if she wanted to keep her range. Let's just look at her metrics in terms of stature. She's 5'7" with a 70-inch reach. Justine Kish on the other side, 5'5" with a 65-inch reach. So obviously, Kish is going to be at a slight disadvantage when it comes to size. I don't think it's going to play out too difficult for her, though, as I think that Kish has the striking background, the kickboxing background, to be able to make this a closer fight than the plus 210 suggests. Justine Kish, she had a solid performance over Lucy Pudilova last time around, where she, a lot of people thought that Pudilova was going to be the one that has, that aggressive striking style that won't allow Justine Kish to really get comfortable. But it was kind of the opposite, where we had Justine Kish, kind of putting the pedal to the metal and really staying in Pudilova's face, throwing leg kicks, was staying busy. I truly think that this fight with Mazo is going to come down to who's the busier fighter, who has more output, as I don't think either woman is really going to be, on track for a finish. I think this truly comes down to who throws more, and both women have high output. Mazo in her last couple of fights, she has hit the 100 strikes mark. Justine Kish gets damn near close to that as well too. But if you're talking about fighters that don't really have knockout power, but throw a lot of strikes, you gotta kind of lean with the dog here. You gotta think that Justine Kish will do enough to, like we've seen Sabina Mazo have trouble keeping the distance and keeping her range from her opponents. And I think Kish will have a good game plan in terms of being able to mix in the leg kicks and then following up with punches, or even the other way around, to open up the face and the body of Sabina Mazo. I don't even think that the headshots will be like the main thing here for Kish. I think if she just settles on beating up the front leg and beating up the body, it will eventually open up the head for her. So Kish is very she is quite experienced. They're pretty much coming in with the same amount of pro MMA fights, but Kish has been fighting on the kickboxing scene a lot too. Kish unfortunately has had leg surgery, which is what kept her out between the Ji-Yoon Kim fight and the Lucy Pudilova fight. She had a huge layoff there, but she looked good coming back in that Pudilova fight. She was able to mix in a takedown at the end of the fight there to really ride out that and put a stamp on that fight. And yeah, it was a late takedown, but she was able to land a couple of shots from on top. But again, she did do some good damage in that third round to really sway the judges before the takedown itself. Yeah, it doesn't sit well with me that Sabina Mazo is a -250 favorite here. This fight should play out much closer than that, and you could absolutely see a case where Justine Kish's output allows her to stay in this fight and possibly get a judge's nod. So, yeah, man, it's tough to pick this fight, but in terms of betting, you got to go with the dog here. Like I would not feel comfortable at all parlaying Sabina Mazo here in a fight that should play out closer than the line insists. So I will go with Justine Kish. I will say that she's going to win by decision, as I do believe that she has a solid kickboxing background. We've seen her in the octagon. She has solid combinations. She has good leg kicks as well. I'd be interested to see if she'll focus on those leg kicks given Sabina Mazo's style, her stance, and how long she fights herself. So I like Justine Kish to win this fight by decision. But even if you like Sabina Mazo, like I'd be hard pressed to tell you that you should be parlaying her at that -250. If she gets down to -150, -140 during fight week or closer to the fight, then I can't really blame you. But -250, that's too heavy of an implied odds to suggest that Mazo has that big of an advantage on Justine Kish here. So I like Kish. I'm going to take her to win this fight by decision, but albeit a close one. But at +210, she's definitely the value side here, and don't let anybody tell you any different. Bryan Barberena versus Anthony Ivy. We got -275 on Bryan Barberena and +235 on Anthony Ivy. Let's start off with Bryan Barberena. He's coming off of 2 losses in a row now to Vicente Luque and Randy Brown. Funny that they both fought each other last. But in here, he steps against Anthony Ivy. He takes roughly about 3 months off after that Randy Brown loss. And it was a solid victory for Randy Brown. Or sorry, no, not 3 months. It's been a year and 3 months since he's fought. I know it's been a while since we saw him fight, so even saying it's been 3 months since he fought kind of sounded wrong to me. But he's taken an extended period of time off. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. He does like to stay active. Like more often than not, if you look through his record, he usually fights every 3 to 6 months. So having this bit of a layoff here, we have no idea how it's really going to affect him. In terms of his age, he's 31, so he's still probably, in prime fighting form. But what we've seen in his last couple of fights, especially the Randy Brown fight, is a little bit of a diminishing of his skill set. Now, I'm not completely going to go out there and say that, that we can just go out there and write him off now. But this fight against Anthony Ivy is a little bit stylistically. It's tough. It's a tough fight for him. Anthony Ivy, I went pretty hard on him in the last fight that he had, his UFC debut. And again, I think he's probably going to be the last ever debuting fighter that I'd bet. But that fight didn't really teach us anything that we didn't already know, especially about Christian Aguilera. Aguilera. Yeah, got to get that right. We knew Aguilera's path to victory in that fight was a first-round knockout. And what did he do? He got a first-minute knockout, too. Beautiful finish of Anthony Ivy in that fight. But I don't really see Bryan Barberena as that one-punch knockout power type of guy. I think it's an accumulation of damage that Barberena really needs to put on his opponent to win a fight. He's a kind of a jack of all trades. Not really the greatest on the ground. Like I wouldn't say that's his strong suit. He does have a couple of submission victories under his belt, but he is an overall complete package. The guy does throw in combinations a little bit. He's gritty. He's tough. He's tough to get out of there. But I think what he's facing here in Anthony Ivy is going to be a tough test. Anthony Ivy kind of has a similar stature to what Randy Brown brought to the game, but Randy Brown is a much better striker than Anthony Ivy. Anthony Ivy uses his kicks very well. A lot of head kicks, a lot of leg kicks, a lot of body kicks. He likes to keep his opponents at range, and then once he, finds the opening, he pushes his opponents up against the cage and starts to drag them down and starts to, implement his suffocating grappling. I'm a big fan of his grappling. He's very, very offensive with it. He seeks the submission pretty much from any position. He's very active with his guard. I just like how smothering he is. So if he's able to push Bryan Barberena up against the cage, he could definitely be the stronger guy here too. So that will definitely play a factor in terms of him keeping Barberena up against the cage, and then eventually, succeeding on takedowns. In terms of takedown defense from Bryan Barberena, UFC stats has him at 43% takedown defense, but I think that has a lot to do with the amount of takedowns that Colby Covington was able to land on him. He landed 12 of 17 takedown attempts on Barberena. But even if you look at other fights, the last fight that an opponent shot a takedown, but he stuffed all of them, was the Warlley fight way back in May of 2016. That was over, 7 fights ago. But since then, Colby Covington and Leon Edwards were the only ones to really shoot for takedowns. Joe Proctor, Jake Ellenberger, Vicente Luque, and Randy Brown, none of them really shot for takedowns. So you can't really say where Barberena's takedown defense is completely. And I think a lot of people are just reading a little bit too much into Ivy getting knocked out quick in his first fight. Barberena should not be minus 275 in this spot. It's tough to really trust him. He even got up to like the minus 300 range, I believe, and then slowly got back down to minus 275. But plus 235, plus 240 is a solid price tag, in my opinion, for Anthony Ivy. I think Ivy has a lot to offer in this fight in terms of making it close, pushing up Barberena against the cage, and even the over 1.5 at minus 130. I think that's a solid price tag too. I like the shot on Ivy here as a dog, just due to, again, the line being a little bit wide. I think he will be successful in terms of stifling the grittiness of Barberena, in terms of just pushing him up against the cage, making it dirty, landing leg kicks from distance, but then mainly doing his work in the clinch, and then slowly getting Barberena down, and then just, grappling him. We did see a little bit of fundamental mistakes that he did against Randy Brown in the clinch, where he gave up his back a couple times. And if you give up to your back to Anthony Ivy, I think Ivy will be a lot quicker in terms of like snatching in the hooks and snatching in a choke of some sort, or at least threatening with the submission and threatening getting this fight to the ground. So I like Ivy in this fight as a solid dog too. It's worth a little bit of a shot to see if he if he could actually get it done. I still need to see a little bit more from Barberena, especially recently. He needs to kind of prove that he's not really truly on a decline, even though he's only 31 years old. He has a little bit too many holes in his game. Again, I don't think he has that one-punch knockout threat, so Ivy shouldn't be too worried right off the bat. But I think we see Ivy come out there a little bit hesitant at first in terms of just throwing his leg kicks, keeping his range, and then just waiting for the proper opportunity to close the distance and start working his grappling, which pretty much everybody and the mother is expecting Anthony Ivy to do here, if you know anything about Ivy. So I think Barberena will be prepared, but I think it will still be a little bit too much for him with Ivy. I don't know if he'll get the submission. Let's say Ivy via third round submission. But I do like the over in this as well too. Minus 130 is not that bad, as I do think both guys are pretty durable. And I do suspect that Barberena will be able to, survive at least for 7.5 minutes if it comes down to the grappling realm. And then Ivy's chin should be okay in terms of Barberena not, being a huge knockout threat. So I will take Ivy to win this fight. You know what? I'll even say by decision. I think Ivy just controls this fight from the top position, gets close to some submissions, but doesn't really pull it off. But I will take Ivy to win this fight via decision. Jalin Turner versus Brok Weaver. We got minus 325 on Jalin Tarantula Turner and plus 250 on Brok Weaver, who, just got a late replacement here. He's supposed to fight Frank Camacho. Camacho test positive for COVID. In steps Jalin Turner, who was supposed to fight last week, but that fight got pulled the day of because Thiago Moises, his former opponent, tested positive for COVID on the day of. So luckily for both Weaver and Turner, Turner stuck around in Vegas, and he was able to get a quick turnaround here against Brok Weaver. So the line pretty much just came out, and it is obviously juiced in terms of Jalin Turner's side. And to be honest, I understand it. I get it, and I'm totally on board with it. I don't mind it at all because I see it here. So let's break this fight down. So if you guys remember my Jalin Turner and what was it, Jalin Turner and Thiago Moises breakdown, I did pick Moises to win that. I did have a small bet on Moises as well too, as his odds continue to drop. I think I got him at -134 or -137, but I thought it was going to come down to the takedowns, and that does seem to be Brock Weaver's game more often than not now. But with that said, I feel like Turner has much better jiu-jitsu than Weaver has, and Weaver sometimes struggles to keep his opponents down, and I just feel like Turner has much better jiu-jitsu than Weaver. I feel like he'll be able to throw up submissions. He'll be able to reverse Weaver. I think Weaver's only chance to really win this fight is to try to get this fight to the ground and just clinch, or either clinch Turner up against the cage, get this fight to the ground, and try to ride top position. But I just don't feel like he'll be able to secure those positions against a much lengthier, a better grappler, in my opinion, too. Maybe not a better wrestler, but definitely a better jiu-jitsu player. And then obviously the advantage on the feet in terms of reach and height. Let's just break that down. We got 6'3", 75.5-inch reach for Jalin Turner, and then we got 6 feet and 73 inches for Brock Weaver. So, about a 3-inch height advantage for Jalin Turner here, and about a 2.5-inch reach advantage, I believe it is. But Jalin Turner does fight along. His stand-up is slowly starting to get better too. I'd be surprised to see if Weaver tries to hang out on the feet, but I do think that even Turner will probably want to get this fight to the ground and implement his submission game. So I do like Turner to win this fight. I truly believe that he's more than deserving of that juice line. I think he's a good parlay piece, to be honest. Even at the -325, -350 range, I think even up to -400, you could parlay this guy. I find it really, really hard to believe that Brock Weaver is going to go out there and control Jalin Turner. I thought Moises was going to have much better success on the ground against Jalin Turner because he's a higher level jiu-jitsu guy, and he's just a much better pure jiu-jitsu guy. But Jalin Turner is crafty on the ground, and I feel like if Brock Weaver tries to just settle on top, he's just not going to be able to. I think Turner is quite active off of his back. He has good reversals, good sweeps, and he's decent on the feet too. He is getting better with his kicks. He's getting better with his hands. His range is obviously going to be in his favor here too. I could absolutely see him finishing this fight as well. That's absolutely a possibility. I do wish we got to see Turner against Moises last time, because I don't think a victory over Weaver here really tells us much more than we already know about Jalin Turner. Like, the kid's good. Don't get me wrong. He's good. But I want to see him against higher level opponent. I thought that Thiago Moises was that higher level of opponent. Brock Weaver is a step down, in my opinion. At least we can say that Brock Weaver is better than Joshua Culibao and better than Callum Potter. So, this is at least a step up in terms of wins that he's had. I'd say he's worse than Matt Frevola and worse than Vicente Luque. I'm talking about Brock Weaver. So, this is slightly a better step in the right direction for Jalin Turner, but this should be a cakewalk for him. I truly think that he's going to have a lot of success here. He should go out there, take down Brock Weaver, or play around on the feet a little bit. I think if Weaver wants to get Turner down, it will be an eventuality. It's gonna happen, but I just don't trust Weaver being able to stay on top here. So I'm gonna take Jalin Turner to win this fight via either ground and pound or submission, maybe inside the distance. I'd like to see what that line is if that drops. I'm assuming with him being a -350-ish favorite right now, the inside the distance will probably be like -125, -130 or something like that. So I'd be happy just to parlay him here, because I think this is a prime spot. So I'm taking the Tarantula to win this fight, probably by first or second round submission. Alexander Romanov versus Roque Martinez. We got -280 on King Kong and +220 on Roque Martinez. Let's start off with Martinez. He's coming over from Risen, coming over on short notice. We all know that Romanov was supposed to fight last weekend against Marcos Rogerio de Lima. De Lima test positive for COVID on the day of the event, kind of similar to the Jalin Turner and Thiago Moises situation. And luckily for them, they both get quick turnarounds in terms of getting an opponent that's willing to step on there. Good for Romanov not having to fly all the way back home. He stuck it around in Vegas. I'm pretty sure that he got a heads up that they were trying to find him an opponent, and luckily they did. They found Roque Martinez. Hopefully, there's no like weigh-in day or fight day positive COVID test for Martinez, because that would really suck for Romanov as well. So let's get into Roque a little bit. Like I said, came over from Risen, was the Deep Impact champion as well. Most notable fights as of late was to Mirko Krokop. That was in September of 2018, where he lost via a cut. That one was tough. What were the odds for that fight? Yeah, they don't have odds out on Tapology, but that one was a little tough strictly due to the cut wasn't that bad. Yeah, they don't even have the odds on Best Fight Odds either. But yeah, it was like a cut right on the top of his forehead, just by his hairline, and it was from a beautiful elbow from Mirko Krokop. But I feel like he could have let that fight continue to go, and he felt the same way. Unfortunately for him, they stopped the fight. Krokop gets the win. Say what you want about some possible tampering or fixing or rigging, but unfortunately loss for him there. He looked decent in that fight. He was eating a lot of shots from Krokop too. But yeah, that was a fight that he ended up losing. And then another notable fight that he lost was to Jake Hune. A lot of people know him too, but Hune, they pretty much just went to war back and forth. And Hune came out with a split decision victory. His last two fights were against a guy named Seijo Mizuguchi and Hideki Sakain. Both of these guys, Seijo, 44 years old, Hideki, 47 years old. It took him 7 minutes to get Seijo out of there, and then it took him 4 minutes to get Hideki out of there. If it was Romanov in that fight, or in both those fights, he probably would have gotten both guys out of there within less than 2 minutes. Roque seems more like a point fighting heavyweight. He doesn't seem to have like crazy knockout power. He throws in combinations. He throws a couple of kicks here and there, but he doesn't seem like the type of guy that's like rushing to get fights to the ground or rushing to get fights over with. We did see an interesting flying knee from him against that 44-year-old, but he's nothing spectacular. There's nothing that really jumps out of the page at me to make me think that this guy's going to be like making a heavyweight run or anything like that. He's 34 years old. If he wants to make a run at all, this is his time. And it's good to go up against a guy like Alexander Romanov, who's also making his UFC debut. The odds a little wide, I won't lie. I do still favor Romanov. If you guys do remember my breakdown of him from the last event, the guy likes to just go for it. He's from the first bell. He likes to rush in there. Likes to take his opponents down and try to ground and pound them, try to King Kong pound them out with crazy hammer fists, or he looks for submissions on the ground as well too. I think it's going to be a little bit too much for Roque. I think that Romanov's just going to pretty much rush him, take him down, and just start wailing on him. Martinez a little bit heavy set, if you want to call it that. Romanov too, but Martinez just doesn't seem to hold it as well as Romanov. So yeah, I think Martinez is going to have a hard time getting Romanov off of him, and we'll see a quick finish for Romanov, in my opinion. I think that we'll see him go in there and take it down within like the first 30 seconds, and then just start to pound him. Romanov does a good job in terms of like being quite agile. Again, that's kind of deceiving for a guy that's as built as he, not built, not like ripped or anything, but like physically how he looks. It's kind of deceiving whenever you see him actually like doing flips and staying one step ahead of his opponents when it comes down to the grappling scrambles. So that's what I expect here with him and Roque. I think he's going to be one step ahead pretty much at all times, and he's just going to continue to pound out Roque. I think Roque is kind of durable. That he hasn't been finished since he got an Achilles loss to Kazushi Tozawa. That was back in 2010. So it's been over 10 years since he's actually lost via finish, with the exception of the Krokop cut. But yeah, I think Romanov is just a fighter that he hasn't fought before. And sketchy records on Martinez's record as well too. Let's just look back. Like he seemed to have taken a 2-year layoff after his Kevin Fatale fight, but since then he's fought a guy that was 4-1, 8-2, then 1-1. That was actually to Da-Un Jung, who is now in the UFC. So Jung actually turned out to be pretty well. 8-4-2, 13-7-2, 16-11, 2-2 Jaideep Singh. I'm sure most of you guys remember him as the guy that Fedor made his return fight with, mainly a kickboxer. Took Roque Martinez the full 15 minutes to go out there and beat him. Was that a 3-rounder or a 5-rounder? Yeah, that was a 3-rounder. Jerome LeBanner, another well-known kickboxer, headlock finished him in the first round, but he was 4-2, 11-10, 36-11 Mirko Cro Cop. Then Ryo Sakai was 8-8. Jay Kuhn was 12-9. He lost that fight. Seiji Mizuguchi was 12-9. And Hideki Sakai was 8-3. Not to mention 47 years old as well too. So sketchy resume for Roque. But Romanov, on the other hand, I think he just has a little bit more in the gas tank. I think he just has that extra gear that Roque doesn't have. And if Romanov's not able to get it done in that first round, it could get interesting. But I do think that Romanov is just going to be too much for Martinez to handle, and he just hasn't fought anybody like Martinez Martinez has not fought anybody like Romanov in a long time. Like he's at, again, like I said, a very, very sketchy record and resume. So I'm expecting Romanov to go in there, get a first round finish. I'll be looking for that first round prop and seeing what they release it as. But yeah, I like Romanov to win this fight via first round TKO. Matt Frevola versus Roosevelt Roberts. We got -115 on Roberts and -105 on the Steamroller. But if you guys look at most other books, you will see plus money beside Matt Frevola's name. You see +107, +110, +109. So it seems like there is a little bit of money coming in on Roosevelt Roberts as this week progresses. It opened pretty much at a pick 'em, and it kind of makes sense. But the more you look into it, you got to favor Matt Frevola. So let's start off with Frevola. He's coming off of 2 wins over Jalin Turner and Luis Pena. Luis Pena fight being a little bit closer than the Turner fight, but both those guys having the same type of stature, tall, lanky guys that have decent grappling. But Matt Frevola went out there and showed that his superior wrestling was going to be the X factor in those fights. And I expect the same thing here against Roosevelt Roberts. The one thing that I did like from Matt Frevola in that Luis Pena fight is that we saw that his striking was slowly getting better too. He's not a Fabinski type of fighter where he's just going out there and just going balls to the wall trying to dive for takedowns and get desperate for takedowns. He's not that type of fighter. And that's good for him. That will fare him well here, but he needs to be careful. Roosevelt Roberts, the standout thing for him is his striking. The guy has fast hands. He has some power in his hands too, but I think that's kind of where it stops. Even though he got a submission victory over Brok Weaver in his last fight, the fight before that, because he had the loss to Jim Miller, pretty much, what was it, 21 days, 3 weeks after the Brok Weaver fight. Even though he has a submission victory there, his grappling is just not, it's not top notch. And I think that Frevola's wrestling could absolutely give him trouble there. Again, it's very important that Frevola has some hands to back up that grappling, because if he just goes in with strictly a grappling approach, I think that Roberts will have decent success in terms of stuffing some takedowns, but there is a lot of work that needs to be done with Roberts' takedown defense. I'm not completely enthralled by his takedown defense, which kind of makes him, not as... doesn't give him as much potential as I originally gave him. A lot of people are really high on him, going into that Vince Pichel fight. And then Pichel showed that, if you have solid grappling, you could definitely take advantage of that flaw that Roberts has. Yakovlev was not as successful with it, but I think that Frevola has a much better wrestling pedigree, which should help him get the victory in this fight. I am a fan of Roberts in the sense that his hands look really good. He hasn't been training MMA that long, and he made his debut back in 2016. Frevola has roughly about 2 years on him, but he also has an extensive amateur record as well too. But I truly think that it's going to come down to Frevola's all-around game, and his jiu-jitsu is not that bad as well. Training at with Matt Serra and those BJJ guys over there in the New York area, he has a solid pedigree there. Obviously, most of his victories have come via finish. He likes to go out there and drop guys and follow up with a submission or just follow up with a little bit of ground and pound. But his hands have a lot of power, so let's not forget about that. It's not just about the grappling for Frevola in this fight. fight. I obviously believe that Roberts will be quicker to the punch. He'll be slightly faster. Might have the slight power advantage, but again, Frevola has some bombs in his hands too. But it truly comes down to the overall game, and I think that Frevola mixes the game a lot better than Roberts. I think he'll do enough to be able to get at least 2 judges' scorecards. I really like Frevola here. The way he was able to like take down Jalin turn out well, have a couple successful takedowns against Luis Pena as well too, who has a credentialed wrestling background of his own. Just leads me to believe that he'll be able to do the same thing to Roosevelt Roberts here. Obviously, the takedown or the knockout is there for Roberts in that first round, but after that, I don't think that his chances get any better of knocking off Matt Frevola. Frevola has a solid cardio gas tank. He's able to go hard from rounds minute 1 to minute 15. We've seen him in trouble in the past before where he gets clipped and dropped, but he's able to gather his wits and get right back into it. A lot of people will tell you that if you get rocked and dropped, it definitely affects your cardio and will have bad effects later on in the fight. But Matt Frevola pretty much just shows the opposite of that. He shows that he can continue ticking even after he gets dropped. So I do like Frevola in this spot. I do like that the odds are getting slightly better. He's one of my stronger leans on this card. And after running the tape, it kind of cements that. A lot of people betting on Roberts here are still kind of banking on his potential. It's clear he obviously has a better hands, but after that, it's his grappling that really needs a little bit of work. And a lot of people thought that Brock Weaver would be able to test him in that, but I don't think that Brock Weaver is as good of a wrestler as Matt Frevola, nor does he really have the technical abilities to complete takedowns against higher level opponents like Roosevelt Roberts. So don't read too much into that Weaver fight, even though that's kind of Weaver's strong suit, at least on the regional scene. But Matt Frevola has been getting it done in that type of way in the UFC for a little bit now. So I do like Matt Frevola to win this fight. I do think that he'll be able to get Roberts down over and over again and really just wear on him from that top position. So I'm going to take Frevola to win this fight via decision. Julia Avila versus Sijara Eubanks. We got -300 on Avila, Raging Panda, and +250 on Sarge Eubanks. Let's start off with Sijara. She was supposed to fight last week, or I believe the week before. Yeah, it was last week against who the hell was she supposed to fight? Carol Hossa, and that's a fight where I had a little bit of money on Carol Hossa. Unfortunately, that gets changed to a push because Carol Hossa ends up having weight cutting issues a day before the weigh-in, so she gets pulled. Sijara quickly gets rebooked against Julia Avila, and very surprised that she took that fight. Considering the type of opposition that Avila is going to be presenting. Hossa is more so an efficient type striker, solid ground game, but really look to, be a type of fighter that wants to put together a couple punches, follow up with the leg kick, just be efficient on the feet, try to go out there and outpoint Hossa. Raging Panda, on the other hand, pretty much lives up to her nickname almost every time out. Sijara has decent striking. Her output and her aggression really starts to dwindle later in the rounds, as we saw in her fight against, Betchkoya, Aspen Ladd. The Sarah Moraes fight, she had a lot of success from bell to bell just due to, the lack of striking coming back to her from Sarah Moraes. Moraes's really only path to victory in that fight was trying to get Sijara Eubanks down and maybe dominate her in the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu round, but she couldn't even do that. Avila, on the other hand, I think is going to have a lot more success. Avila, brown belt in Jiu-Jitsu, but most of her chops have really come from the striking, and she has this, I'm going to call it the Raging Panda mode, where she looks very calm and collected and just kind of calculating what's going on around her. And then she just turns on this switch where she just bull rushes forward, starts off with a nice jab, comes over with the straight over that, and then just starts to swarm her opponent up against the cage. Sometimes she'll look for a takedown after that. More often than not, she just looks to pound at her opponent, mix in some beautiful knees. Her front kick up the middle is a thing of beauty as well, which really led to the finish of Alexa Connors in her last Invicta fight. In the Pani Kianzad fight, Kianzad had a little bit of success on the feet, but it was more so Julia Avila just really turning it on in these situations where, there was one time where Pani Kianzad is kind of waving her on, be like, all right, come, let's go. Like she was really like feeling herself. And then like maybe 10 seconds later, Julia Avila just rushes forward, turns on that Raging Panda mode, clocks Pandy Kianzad beautifully. Questionable decision making after that in terms of going for a takedown compared to and clinching up rather than just unloading on the feet, because she probably would have found the finish. But regardless, she still found a dominating victory. She has great cardio as well too, and she seems like a fighter. It's kind of weird coming from somebody who's a geologist as well too. She's very, very intelligent. She's very smart, but she is absolutely a raging panda when it comes into the cage. So yeah, she's deserving of that -300, especially against Sijara Eubanks, who I think will definitely fold under that pressure. Sarge may have a little bit of success in that first round, but after that, Julia Avila is going to come hard, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if we see Julia Avila get a second round finish here. I think just her tenacity behind her striking, her commitment to her striking as well too. Sijara Eubanks just likes to throw out a couple shots here and there. She doesn't really have too much behind them, but Avila, man, she's very intimidating. She has a strong game. Again, her wrestling is good too. Her jiu-jitsu, she's a brown belt, so I think she'll be able to hold her own if it gets into that realm. But I truly think she'll do her best work on the feet in terms of just overwhelming Sarge, pushing her up against the cage and then just unloading strikes on her. I think it could look similar to the Aspen Ladd fight, but with more success for Julia Avila, Aspen Ladd has this weird striking style where she looks stiff. You know what I mean? She stands up in this upright position and she throws a couple shots and it just doesn't look the best. And it doesn't seem like she has much behind it either. Obviously, Aspen Ladd's best game comes when she's able to grapple fuck her opponents, get them to the ground and kind of pound them up from on top. Julia Avila is able to do that, but also mix in the striking too. So, I think that Avila is she's a strong woman as well at bantamweight, so Sijara is going to have to deal with a little bit of a strength discrepancy here. But I think, Avila is, if she was able to be a little bit more active, she would probably be like in title talks already. You know what I mean? She would be a top contender by far, in my opinion. Like, look at all these. So she was supposed to make her UFC debut in July of 2019. She ends up doing that. I'm not sure if that was supposed to be a sneeze or a yawn, but regardless, something came out. Anyway, she fought Pandy Kianzad in July, but then she was scheduled to fight in October. Who pulled out there? She pulled out there. Hossa pulled out there. They rebooked the Hossa fight for April. Then that obviously gets canceled due to the pandemic. Then she was supposed to fight Hossa again. That gets canceled. Hossa withdraws June 13th. And then that night she ended up fighting Gina Mazzani. And then she was supposed to fight Nico Montano August 8th. That gets rescheduled to September 9th. Montano tests positive for COVID. And then she gets pushed back another week now to fight Sijara Eubanks. It's weird that It's weird that they have October 3rd for her to still fight Nico Montano. Maybe they're pulling a Khamzat Chimaev where they're just booking 2 fights for this guy, assuming that he's going to win the last one. But regardless, in this fight against Sijara Eubanks, a very, very winnable fight for her. Kind of tailor-made for her too. The longer this fight goes, the easier it will be for Avila to get Sijara out of there. Kudos to Sijara for even taking this fight. Stylistically, just not a good fight. The most Sijara will be able to hope for is be able to outpoint Julia on the feet. I think early the output will be in Sijara's favor, but the longer this fight goes, I think Avila turns it on, really gets moving forward, and cracks Sijara. I truly think that we'll see Avila get a second or third round stoppage here, so I'd be interested to see what that looks like. In terms of the fight doesn't go to decision, which is the only prop that's out right now. Plus 130 for the fight doesn't go to decision, so, and it's closing too. Because, it opened at plus 150. It's down to plus 130 now. I expect that to close a little bit more as people start to believe in Julia Avila's finishing ability. So I'm taking Julia Avila to win this fight by second round TKO. And I think she just makes it look easy. And look out for this woman. She will definitely be a top contender in the 135-pound division. Tyson Nam versus Matt Schnell. We got minus 125 on Tyson Nam. and plus 105 on Matt Danger Schnell. You can get him as good as plus 108, plus 110 on some bookies. And the line was pretty much a pick 'em as I started researching this fight, and the line seemed to have slowly widened a little bit from Tyson Nam. So let's start off with Tyson Nam. He's 1-2 in the UFC, 2 losses to Sergio Pettis and Kai Kara France, and then he goes in there and knocks out Zaruk Adashev, who, in my opinion, say what you want about his kickboxing experience. One, he didn't seem like he came in shape at all for that fight. And two, the guy is super fucking small. And, Tyson Nam had a huge reach advantage there, which in my opinion really allowed him to exaggerate the amount of power that he had in his hands, as Zaruk had to be really close to land that leg kick that he eventually was countered on, and Tyson Nam really was able to push through that counter and really pretty much punch through Zaruk's face to pretty much render him unconscious. It was insane how out Zaruk Adashev was in that fight, but that's pretty much the way Tyson Nam wins his fights. If he's not able to get the knockout, it's very tough for him to really go out there and get a decision victory. Like he had one decision victory against a guy named Shojin Miki, who was 6-4 going into that fight. So you got to assume that he wasn't the greatest of oppositions. The Ali Bago-Otina fight, he was close to losing that fight. He was 1 second away. Or sorry, that was a 5-round fight. He got that head kick finish on Bago-Otina with 1 second left in the third round in a fight where he was pretty much, losing that fight as well. But here he is against Matt Schnell, who in my opinion is the much better technical striker and also a more active striker as well too. Has more output, has decent head movement. Like, it looks weird because his head is always just straight, but he moves it pretty well from side to side. I think Schnell has the quicker hands. In terms of the reach, I think Nam will have a little bit of a reach advantage. It looks like Matt Schnell actually has the advantage there. So Tyson Nam 5'7", 68-inch reach, 72.5-inch reach with 5'8" for Matt Schnell. So that is actually a little bit surprising. I don't know why I thought that Tyson Nam was going to be the longer fighter here, but regardless, that works even more in favor of Matt Schnell in my opinion. So Matt Schnell's last loss, obviously, he got knocked out by Alexandre Pantoja. Beautiful counter overhand right for Alexandre Pantoja that pretty much face planted Matt Schnell. So tough finish for Matt Schnell there. But before that, he was riding a 4-fight winning streak over Marco Beltran. Naoki Inoue handed him his first loss there. Luis Smoka and Jordan Espinoza. Those last two, he actually got finishes and first round finishes as well too. He looked good in the Pantoja fight. Like, he was going strike for strike with Pantoja. He was landing him a couple times. He even rocked Pantoja at a point. Pantoja was able to do a good job in terms of getting his wits back about him. You got to question slightly the fight IQ of Matt Schnell to pull guard when he had Alexandre Pantoja hurt there. Thinking that he was probably going to throw up some slick submission or something like that. Didn't really work out in his favor, and then obviously pays for it later in that round. I think in this fight, it's going to come down to whether Tyson Nam lands that knockout shot, lands that kill shot. If he's not able to, I think Matt Schnell boxes his face off. He will strike his face off if Tyson Nam's not able to really get him out of there. And, again, I'm not sure why I thought that Nam was going to have the reach and length advantage here, but it makes me feel a little bit safer, leaning Schnell the way I am post-tape now. Schnell has, if he's going to have a little bit of a reach advantage, I think he'll be able to get his shots in and get out before really eating too much damage from Tyson Nam. It's crazy to me, the recency bias that we're getting here with Tyson Nam in terms of getting that minus 125. And I think the line is only going to get worse on Tyson Nam, which means it'll only get better on Matt Schnell. So I'm going to be waiting it out a little bit. I think that we will see more people put money on Tyson Nam, especially considering that he got a quick knockout in his last fight. And we've seen Matt Schnell get knocked out a couple times now in the UFC. I think that's prime for some wiki cappers to go out there and just put some money on Tyson Nam thinking that he's going to win this fight. I think the way you have to look for Tyson Nam to win this fight, Tyson Nam wins inside the distance is plus 155. Schnell to win inside the distance is plus 290. I do think that Schnell wins by decision. I think he just pretty much outpieces him for all 15 minutes. The only shot I would really give Tyson Nam here is if he gets that first round knockout. And that I'd be interested to see what that prop looks like. As of this recording, we don't have that information available to us, but I think that Tyson Nam is like round 1 KO or bust. And I know that he's had a couple KOs later, in the third round and all that. But I think that the type of striking that's going to be coming from Matt Schnell is really going to render Tyson Nam kind of like immobile. Like it's just going to be like, I don't know what the fuck to do. There's too much coming my way. And it's coming very fast too. Like Schnell has really good striking, very crisp, he has a lot of pop on his shots too. And again, I think it comes down to the combinations and the volume of strikes that we're going to be seeing from Achno. With Tyson Nam, very rarely do you ever see him throw more than 2 strikes in a combination. Achno, we get a lot more than that. And not just a lot more, we get a lot of pop on those shots as well too. So Tyson Nam just seems like sometimes he has a little bit too much fun in there in terms of getting hit, and then whenever he does land a decent shot on his opponent, he kind of admires his work a little bit too much and just is a little bit lackadaisical in the cage at times. Matt Schnell, on the other hand, I think he's pretty much like in the game from bell to bell. He knows that he has a job to go and do, and until he gets his opponent out of there, he doesn't really take a back step. So, Tyson Nam a little bit too, carefree in the cage for my liking. And again, I think it's just a lot of people with the recency bias here seeing that Tyson Nam won his last fight by quick knockout, and Matt Schnell recently got knocked out too. So let the wiki cappers do their thing with the betting line. Just sit back. We might get a plus 120, plus 125 on Matt Schnell at a certain point. But if Tyson Nam goes out there and knocks him out in the first round, I'd be happy to lose a little bit of money on that because that's his only path to victory. Just like the Alonzo Menafield fight from last week. If Menafield went out there and knocked out OSP in that first round, I would have been fine with that because I know that's pretty much his own path to victory. But once I got out of the first round, or even as that fight started to go on, we saw that OSP was starting to take over, and I think that's what's going to happen here with Matt Schnell. But I think that he will be more assertive than OSP was right from the get-go. I think Tyson Nam's really going to feel the power, pressure, and the volume on Schnell from the get-go, and it's not going to allow him to really, get off a good enough counter or even, close that distance enough to be able to knock out or to get a knockout blow on Matt Schnell. So I'm going to go with Matt Schnell to win this fight via decision. I'm just going to wait it out to see how much better that line gets, as I truly believe that more money will come in on Tyson Nam as this week goes on. So let's just sit back and capitalize on it when we get a chance. So once again, I got Matt Schnell to win this fight via decision. Billy Quarantillo versus Kyle Nelson. We got minus 250 on Billy Q and plus 210 on the monster Kyle Nelson. The fight doesn't go to decision, is minus 185. Under 2.5 is minus 140. And I do expect this fight to not go to a decision. Does it go under 2.5 rounds? Not 100% sure. But there is one path to victory that I'm really liking here, and I'll probably try to exploit. So let's start off with Kyle Nelson. He's a guy up here from the Ontario region. Northern Toronto. I wouldn't even call it Toronto because it's like an hour and a half north of here, but he's from like the Muskoka area. He's been around for a while. He's made a name for himself on the regional scene. He fought on a couple of shows that I actually worked back in the day. His score fighting series, SCC1, SCC2, and then he finally broke out into the UFC. After getting victories over Jonathan Brookins, former UFC or Ultimate Fighter contestant, and even Khama Worthy, who's a co-headlining this card as well too. He knocked him out in the first round back at BTC1 in 2017. He did go over to, I believe it was Romania, got a victory over there, and then got a quick turnaround against Diego Ferreira, which was his UFC debut. He fought in Romania November 19th, and then roughly about 2 to 3 weeks later comes in and fights Diego Ferreira on December 8th. Big step up for him, obviously super short notice. He goes out there in the first round and just puts it on Diego Ferreira. Kind of like the Justin James thing against Frank Camacho. He knew, short notice. He knew he probably had the knockout power to do it. So he's just going to go out there, try to rush it, try to catch their opponent off guard. James was successful. He put Camacho out. Unfortunately for Kyle Nelson, he was not able to put out Diego Ferreira. Ferreira comes out there, takes advantage of the gas dump and the adrenaline dump of Kyle Nelson and finishes him in the second round. Matt Sales, has a very good first round against Kyle Nelson. Kyle Nelson kind of trips or something up against the cage, and then Matt Sales just unloads on him for the rest of the round. The next round, Kyle Nelson just controls Matt Sales completely on the ground, just not able to get the finish there. And then in the third round, it really looked like the cardio was hurting for Kyle Nelson, and Matt Sales was able to really take advantage, capitalize on that, and then get the arm triangle choke. Didn't seem like there was much fight from Kyle Nelson to try to get out of it. He just seemed completely spent at that point in time, so he comes out on the losing end there. And then the Polo Reyes fight, that's the type of fight where Kyle Nelson will probably win, is if a guy goes in there and tries to strike for him, strike for strike, stand in the pocket and try to, just go guns blazing. And Polo Reyes, very, very questionable chin, especially at that point in time. I believe that was his last fight in the UFC as well, because that would have put him at 8-8. 500 fighter Polo Reyes, weird. Like, he did have a little bit of a glimpse of hope and potential at a certain point, but then it just completely went downhill for him. But good win for Kyle Nelson there, especially in Polo Reyes' backyard. And now he comes against Billy Quarantillo. Very, very tough fight here. It's first round knockout for Kyle Nelson or bust, because I truly think that the pace and pressure that Billy Quarantillo puts on his opponents is just second to none. I truly believe that we'll see Billy Quarantillo go out there and get a submission victory. He's on a 3-6-7 fight winning streak now. Questionable decision last time around against Spike Carlisle on MMA decisions. A lot of the fans actually had Spike Carlisle winning that fight. And on first watch, I thought Quarantillo won as well. Carlisle won as well. But my main thing over there was I actually had the under 2.5 in that bet or in that fight, and obviously that didn't end up hitting. There's so many opportunities for that fight to get finished, but neither guy could really capitalize on it. Crazy fight. But somebody tweeted to me earlier this week, there's never a boring Billy Q fight. You know what I mean? The guy always goes out there and brings it, and I truly think he has what it takes to go out there and beat Kyle Nelson and break Kyle Nelson. So him to win inside the distance at plus 110 is a decent line. Like, I think that's the better line to play than him to, just win outright at minus 255, which is what I believe he currently is at minus 250. So I do very much like the inside the distance, especially at plus money. I think, as long as he gets out of that first round, he could even get it done in that first round too. Like, his pace and pressure and his black belt in jiu-jitsu really, really helps him, get a lot of these positions. Kyle Nelson doesn't seem the greatest on the ground. And I think just the pace and the forward movement and the relentlessness of Billy Q is really going to catch up to Kyle Nelson at a certain point here. Especially if this fight just hits the ground right off the bat, I think Kyle Nelson is in trouble. So, the fun prop to all we spoke with Billy Q was him to win inside the third round, but I think he could get it done even sooner. So I'm not really looking to bet him by a round. I'd like to bet him by submission. We don't have access to that line as of yet, at least at the time of this recording. But him to win inside the distance is plus 110. So I like that. I like that spot here. I think Kyle Nelson is just a little bit too outmatched here. Again, now Nelson has solid striking. He has solid power in his hands. But if he's not able to use that effectively, and I don't see him being able to use it effectively here against Billy Q, I think he's going to be in trouble. So I do like Billy Q to win this fight. I'm going to say by second round submission. I could absolutely see it happening in the first round too, because I don't really believe too much in Kyle Nelson's takedown defense either. So I do think we'll see Billy Q get this fight to the ground at a certain point and then start to work his jiu-jitsu, work his way to his back, and get a rear naked choke. So I can't wait to see what Billy Q really has to offer here. Just going back to the Spike Carlisle fight real quick, though, like, he had a lot of those submissions locked up, but Spike Carlisle just is so explosive, so strong, and he's just able to get out of these weird and awkward positions compared to Kyle Nelson. I don't think he has the same explosiveness, and I don't think he has the same submission defense either. So I truly think that Billy Q will be able to get a submission relatively easy in this fight, as long as he doesn't get knocked down in the first round on the feet. But yeah, I'm going to go with Billy Q to win this fight via second round submission. Bobby Green versus Alan Patrick. We got minus 255 on Bobby Green, plus 215 on Alan Patrick. Let's start off with Bobby Green. active Bobby Green. We got Bobby Green coming in for his third fight in 3 months, just under 3 months. The man is staying active. He's loving this whole COVID thing, and he's staying healthy, which is pretty much been the unfortunate derailment of Bobby Green's career over the last couple of years. I think an active Bobby Green is a dangerous Bobby Green. We've seen in his last couple of fights. The Clay Guida fight was a little bit of a just kind of a bit of a toss up for him. The Lando Venata fight was a great fight for him to kind of right that wrong of the first draw that they had, and now here he is against Alan Patrick, who Patrick is a dangerous opponent, but he himself is battling injuries and being able to stay active inside the cage. Patrick, this is going to be his first fight since UFC 229, which is actually when Khabib fought McGregor way back in October of 2018. So we're approaching close to 2 full years of Patrick being off. This is good for Bobby Green. I think if Patrick was active as well too, the odds might be a little bit closer. Patrick has a very imposing style, a very grinding type of game plan that he always brings into his fights. But Bobby Green, great hands, solid chin, great experience, decent wrestling and jiu-jitsu. But there are times where it seems like he gets lackadaisical. Yeah, we saw those a little bit more in the Drakkar close fight and the Francisco Trinaldo fights, and it seems like he's kind of turned it around for these last 2 fights against Guida and Venata. But if anybody's going to, try to stifle the game plan or the forward movement of Green, it's going to be Patrick. But the heavy X factor of him being out of the ring for so long has me a little bit more cautious about taking Patrick here. With that said, even taking Bobby Green, I don't know why I wanted to say Bobby Walker. That'd be a pretty cool name anyway. But Bobby Green minus 255, that's a little bit too wide for me. I do feel like the fight could be a little bit closer. Take away the layoff for Patrick, him closing the distance and him pushing Bobby Green up against the cage and possibly securing takedowns is a high probability. I think that could absolutely happen. It just depends on if he's going to be able to get in there and just feel like himself. His fight against Scott Holtzman, that was a tough one. Scott Holtzman is an explosive, strong, quick fighter, great all-around fighter, and we saw what happens when Patrick is not able to get the fight to the ground. I don't think that we'll see Bobby Green have as much success as Holtzman did in terms of keeping this fight on the feet, as I just feel like Holtzman is just, I feel like Holtzman has the better hips in terms of being able to stuff takedowns, better with the speed, better with the explosiveness. Bobby Green, solid, decent speed, decent explosiveness, but I just think that Patrick has such a swarming style that it's tough for guys to really get out of his grasps. He was able to be successful against Damian Brown, Stevie Ray, and Damir Hadzovic, and obviously those guys aren't Bobby Green level, but I believe Damir Hadzovic brings a little bit more power to the game than Bobby Green, and Stevie Ray has a little bit, decent technical striking, but Patrick was still able to go out there and grind these guys out. Bobby Green maybe not the greatest game off of his back, so I don't think that would be too tough for Patrick to stay out of submissions. But man, the layoff has me a little bit hesitant. I will still pick Patrick to win this fight. I do believe that he has all the chops, and I just like his grinding style. Against guys that aren't as explosive as like a Mirbek Taisumov or a Scott Holtzman, I feel like Patrick could have his way with them. So, Bobby Green needs to fight urgent in this fight. He needs to stay on his feet. He needs to keep moving. If he just, kind of plods and starts talking shit and gets caught up in that game, before he knows it, he's going to have lost to 29-28 or 30-27 because Patrick is just holding him up against the cage or taking him down and just grinding him out that way. Bobby Green sometimes he's his own enemy at times, and I think that in this fight against Patrick, he really needs to be sharp. Like, he needs to make sure that Patrick isn't successful pushing him up against the cage, and just stalling, because judges will score that for Patrick, especially if Green isn't being active. So I do think that Green has the advantage in the striking. I think, he is slightly faster on the feet. Patrick's going to have to, utilize his kicks, wait for the right time to push Bobby Green up against the cage, and then start working for his takedowns, because that's where he's going to do his best work. So I'm going to take Patrick to win this fight. I probably won't end up betting it though. Even though like if you go out there and you think that somebody's going to win a fight, especially if they're a plus 220 favorite, you're probably going to want to bet them. But the layoff has me a little bit cautious, so I'm going to stay away from betting this fight. But I will take the underdog to win, and I just feel like the line is a little bit too wide. If you give me minus 150 on Bobby Green, I'd be a little bit more comfortable on that side. But I still like Patrick here, so I'm going to go with Alan Patrick to win this fight via decision. Ed Herman versus Mike Rodriguez. We got minus 255 on slow Mike, and we got plus 215 on Ed Herman. It seems like the line is slowly closing a little bit. Rodriguez did open minus 245, got down to minus 265, and slowly hovered back to minus 255, so it kind of makes sense. The inside the distance line has just dropped as well, too, so we got Herman inside the distance at plus 480. I think that's a little bit ridiculous. They believe that he has a better chance of winning by decision than they do inside the distance. Obviously, slow Mike Rodriguez, minus 130 to win inside the distance makes a ton of sense there, especially off of his big victory over Marcin Prachnio last time around. So let's start off with Big Slow. He did have that good performance against Prachnio, but there's always been that question about Prachnio and his durability. He's pretty much gotten deaded in all of his UFC fights that he's been a part of, and we know that Mike Rodriguez has a lot of power. The guy is a big guy, and especially when you're getting hit by him in the clinch with those elbows, you're definitely going to take a lot of damage, or you're definitely going to go down. I think if it was Ed Herman too, Ed Herman probably would have gone down as well too. The fight doesn't go to decision is minus 210. Makes a little bit of sense there too. But I'm interested to see what they're going to drop the over-under at. If it's set at 2.5, I'd be very interested to actually, take a stab at the under 2.5. With it being at minus 210 for the fight to not go to a decision, I'm assuming we'll get like minus 180 or something like that it'll probably be a little bit higher. At minus 180, minus 185 sounds about right for the under 2.5, but we'll see what they set it at. It'll probably be 1.5 if I'm being honest. But I do think that Rodriguez is rightfully favored here. Do I feel comfortable with him at minus 255? A little bit. This is a veteran test against Ed Herman here. Ed Herman has a lot of miles on him. He was obviously supposed to fight Gerald Meerschaert a couple weeks ago, August 1st, I believe it was, and then Meerschaert pulls out the day of due to testing positive for COVID, and we were close to getting a fight with him and Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland had offered to fight Gerald Meerschaert, especially after Trevin Giles pulled out as well due to, I believe, nerves or something, whatever it was. But that was that weird event where like so many people were getting struck by the COVID, and then we had Giles pass out before walking out, and we also had another fighter who passed out after their fight. I think it was Joanne Calderwood who passed out after her fight. So it was such a weird night, August 1st for that fight night. Ed Herman, as soon as he got the news that Gerald Meerschaert was tested positive for COVID and that they were not going to have that fight, he hopped on a plane already, started drinking, and just got the fuck out of there. So they weren't able to get that Kevin Holland fight in. But here he is, just about over a month afterwards, fighting Mike Rodriguez, who's stepping in on short notice. Originally, Herman was supposed to fight Gerald Meerschaert. Meerschaert pulls out, and stops John Allen. Allen pulls out, and stops Mike Rodriguez to take the short notice opportunity. And I think it's a great spot for Mike Rodriguez. I think he has more power right now, slightly more athletic, slightly more explosive. The only thing Herman really has going for him is his durability. Last time he got put out was Nikita Krylov back in 2016. Obviously, before that was Derek Brunson in 2015. But I think that he hasn't really fought anybody with the punching power of Mike Rodriguez since Nikita Krylov. And even Krylov, decent power puncher, but it was really the head kick that got at Herman in that fight. CB Dalloway, not really a power puncher. Gian Vellante, not a power puncher. Patrick Cummins, more so a wrestler. And Khadis Ibrahimov, I don't even want to get into that guy. So with Mike Rodriguez here, I think it's either guy is capable of a finish. You know what I mean? If you have money on Mike Rodriguez, I wouldn't mind if you threw up a little bit of hedge money on Ed Herman at plus 480 to win inside the distance, because I truly think that he is capable of getting a finish here over a young upstart in Mike Rodriguez. So This one's a little bit tougher to call. I am leaning towards Mike Rodriguez. I think he should win this fight. I think he will be able to put out Ed Herman. But the under 2.5 is kind of what I'm hoping for. If we can get a decent line on that, I might throw a little bit of change on that. But I do like Rodriguez to win here. I think he's going to be the stronger guy. I think once Ed Herman really feels him, he's going to be like, fuck it. Especially in the clinch, I think he's going to have a lot of trouble dealing with a big guy like Mike Rodriguez here. Just talking about like statistic or physiques, 6'1", 75-inch reach for Ed Herman, and for Slow Mike we got 6'4", 82.5-inch reach. So Herman's really going to be outgunned in terms of physique here, and especially strength as well too. So I do like Mike Rodriguez to win this fight. I think he just puts it together, gets into the clinch, and really starts to tear apart Ed Herman with some knees, and hopefully it opens up some elbows for him as well too. But I think this fight, there's a good chance it will go under 1.5. But I would need to see those odds to really be tempted to really take the shot there. So I'm taking Mike Rodriguez to win this fight via second round KO. You know what? Let's go first round KO. I think he should definitely win this fight. It's his chin that has me a little bit iffy, which is why I would rather go with the under rather than picking Mike Rodriguez. But yeah, I do like Rodriguez, and he should definitely win this fight. So I'm going to take him to win by first round KO. Andrea Lee versus Roxanne Modafferi. We got -310 for KGB Lee and +255 for Roxanne Modafferi. No over-unders or anything like that. And I bring that up for a reason. You guys will see why afterwards. So let's start off with the Roxanne Modafferi. She's coming off a loss to Lauren Murphy last time around. That was back at June 20th. So she's making a relatively quick or standard turnaround just under 3 months later here against Andrea Lee, a very, very tough opponent. It's funny because both of them had their last opponents as Lauren Murphy. Both of them coming up on the short end. Andrea Lee probably getting robbed. But we'll talk about that a little bit when we get over to Andrea Lee. So what do we get with Roxanne Modafferi? A veteran, probably has the most amount of women's MMA fights. Gotta be, I can't fact check that right now for you guys, but she's definitely been around for a while. She made her pro debut back in 2003, so she's been fighting for at least 17 years now. She's been on The Ultimate Fighter. She's been in the UFC. She's been out of the UFC. She's been back in the UFC. She's fought in Invicta. She's fought all over the place. So she's coming into her, 42nd MMA fight. And in terms of age, she's all the way up at 37 years old. So, she's been around the block. She's seen a lot of different styles, and she continues to, pretty much exchange wins and losses. It's crazy. Since she's come off The Ultimate Fighter, she lost to Nico Montano. She beat Barbara Honchak. She lost to Sijara Eubanks. She beat Antonina Shevchenko, lost to Jennifer Maia, beat Macy Barber, and then lost to Lauren Murphy. And now here she is against Andrea Lee. So based on the patterning, you got to think that she's going to go out there and beat Andrea Lee, right? Probably not. In the Lauren Murphy fight, we saw what happened when she's not able to initiate and get her takedowns. Lauren Murphy did a good job of digging for underhooks, working off the cage, and then just implementing her strong striking. That's the difference here with Andrea Lee and her last two opponents. Roxanne Modafferi doesn't really have the best hands. She doesn't really have the best striking. She's very rudimentary with it. She looks very awkward and stiff when she's throwing too. She just does not look comfortable at all on the feet. You'd think with the type of striking she has, she would have that Fabinski style, that Bartosz Fabinski style of just using her strikes to push her opponent up against the cage and then initiate the clinch and try to get the takedown. But she goes out there and strikes a little bit more than she probably should. We saw her get rocked in the Lauren Murphy fight, and yeah, she didn't get finished there, but it didn't look good for her whenever this fight was on the feet. Lauren Murphy, kind of a stronger woman, so she was able to do well in those clinch positions, solid striking, and we obviously saw that here. And yeah, that was, in hindsight, I'm kind of bummed at myself for not really taking the shot on Lauren Murphy there, because that fight was pretty much a pick'em from the get-go. So I'm bummed I didn't really spot that when that fight was going down back at June 20th. But props to anybody that took that Lauren Murphy shot. Roxanne Modafferi, she really just has the path to victory in terms of getting her opponents down. If she's not able to get her opponents down and keep them down, she's going to have a lot of difficulty, in my opinion. And I think she's going to have some difficulty here against Andrea Lee. She might be able to get her down. Will she be able to keep her down? I don't think so. I think Andrea Lee is pretty well versed in terms of getting back to her feet. She was taken down by Joanne Calderwood. She was taken down by Lauren Murphy. But, she was able to find her way back to her feet in those situations. There's not too much else to say about Roxanne Modafferi. Again, when she's not really able to implement her grappling and her takedowns, she has a tough time. Her most notable win to date has got to be Antonina Shevchenko. That Macy Barber fight obviously has an asterisk over it just due to Macy Barber having that knee injury that she sustained, I think, in the first or second round. But the Shevchenko win, that was a clean win. She went out there, got Shevchenko down over and over again, and was able to implement it from on top. I think Andrea Lee has a lot more to offer from the top position than even from the bottom than Antonia Shevchenko did. Moving over to Andrea Lee, very complete fighter in my opinion. Even though she's coming off of 2 split decision losses, in those fights, I believe, there's an argument that she did lose in a Joanne Calderwood fight. I'm okay with that. But the Lauren Murphy fight, that was an absolute robbery. Even if you look over at MMA decisions, that like pretty much everybody, there wasn't one media member that gave that fight to Modafferi. And even the scoring, the fan scoring, like there was more 30-27s than there were 29-28s. There were more 30-27 and 29-28 for Andrea Lee than there was even a 29-28 for Lauren Murphy. And let's not forget that one of the judges gave all 3 fucking rounds to Lauren Murphy. So that was absolute bullshit. Those first 2 rounds, in my opinion, were clearly Andrea Lee. That third round, you can make a little bit of an argument for Lauren Murphy, but yeah, that was an Andrea Lee fight. I think what really swayed the judges there was that they thought it was a little bit closer of a fight on the feet. But if you really watch that fight, Andrea Lee was piecing up Lauren Murphy and was really doing well in terms of the output too. But then in the last 30 seconds of that first and second round, Lauren Murphy was able to secure a takedown. But even with those takedowns, she did absolutely nothing with it. So if you have top position for 30 seconds with no damage being rained down, you should not be, okay, she got the takedown at the end of a pretty even round. It wasn't an even round. You really got to watch that fight and see the technical striking of Andrea Lee, how often she was hitting her, how clean she was hitting her, how much she was getting at Lauren Murphy to miss too. So that one was a rough one. I don't think I had money on that one. I did have money on Andrea Lee in the Joanne Calderwood fight. That one was disappointing, but I can't be too mad at that, as I did think that Calderwood did enough work to actually get that decision. But the Lauren Murphy one, even if I had money on that or didn't have money on that, it's just ridiculous that Lauren Murphy was given the judge's nod there. But here, I think Andrea Lee will have a lot more success against Roxanne Modafferi. And those 2 fights against Calderwood and Murphy, the only difference is here with Modafferi is that Murphy and Calderwood actually had legit striking. They have good striking. For women's MMA standards, she has good striking, or they had decent enough striking. Modafferi, on the other hand, I think that Andrea Lee is going to be able to dance circles around her, pretty much mix up combinations. She has solid length too, which should be able to play a little bit of a factor into here. It says the height, Modafferi has a 1-inch height advantage, and then Lee just has a 0.5-inch reach advantage. But I feel like when it really comes down to the striking, you'll see the smoother, crisper striking of Andrea Lee start to pay off here. She'll be able to keep Roxanne Modafferi at bay, really keeping her on the end of her punches and her kicks. And I think that we will see instances where Modafferi pushes Andrea Lee up against a cage and possibly secures a takedown, but I don't think she'll be able to hold her down long enough to be able to really, accrue points. And thankfully, we're in Vegas where we have a little bit better judging than we did have in Texas when Andrea Lee fought Lauren Murphy. So I don't think that we'll see the judges score the takedowns at the end of a round or something like that, especially if Modafferi is not able to, 1, hold her down long enough, 2, get enough damage. And then obviously Andrea Lee should be able to get back to her feet. She has solid jiu-jitsu as well too, so there's nothing to worry about there. She's a brown belt. I think we'll see her hold her own if it does get into the grappling exchanges, but I think we'll see this fight mainly play out on the feet, where Andrea Lee should be able to have more than enough success. And I think a sneaky prop here might be Andrea Lee to win inside the distance. Modafferi has taken a lot of damage in her last couple fights. I think Lee is a really good precision striker. She may not have a ton of power, and she hasn't really finished a fight via strikes since 2017, but this might be a good spot. In terms of the discrepancy with the striking, I think Andrea Lee has a good shot of landing good enough strikes on Modafferi to rock her, drop her, and maybe club and sub type of thing, or even just follow up with punches. But I do like Andrea Lee to win this fight. She's one of my stronger leans on the card. Obviously, it's the only thing that would keep you a little bit skeptical here is if Modafferi is successful early and often with the takedowns. I just don't think it. I think Lee moves well enough that she'll be able to get out of the way. She looked like she came back rejuvenated in that Lauren Murphy fight from the Joanne Calderwood fight. Like, we saw a little bit more of an output for her. We saw her, put a little bit more oomph behind her strikes. Obviously, it was those late takedowns that kind of swayed the judges when they shouldn't have. But that was an easy win for Andrea Lee, in my opinion. So she got robbed last time. I don't think she'll get robbed this time. I really like her in this spot. Obviously totally worth the minus 300 line that she's currently at. But yeah, I think Lee takes this fight. Obviously the safe play is decision, but I'm assuming the inside the distance is going to be something crazy because the fight doesn't go to decision is lined at minus 350. So, plus 250 for the fight to not go to decision. If Lee by decision might be like minus 115, her inside the distance might be like plus 2, I don't know, maybe plus 300 or something like that. I'm not 100% sure, but if it's better than like plus 400 or something, I might take a little bit of a shot. So I'll take Andrea Lee by second round TKO, just to throw some spice in there. But I do like Andrea Lee to win this fight. And yeah, this would be a great fight for her to bounce back and snap that 2-fight losing streak she's on. And hopefully the judges don't screw her this time. Khama Worthy versus Ottman Azaitar. We got minus 135 on Worthy and plus 115 on Azaitar. The over-under is at 1.5. With the under being plus 115, the fight doesn't go to decision is minus 275. So if this was set at 2.5, I'd probably be looking at the under, but 1.5 makes it a little bit tricky. Let's start off with Ottman Azaitar, 12-0, had a very spectacular knockout last time at UFC 242 against Timo Packalin, where he just bombed on him with an overarm right. It was a thing of beauty. It was a very, very nice knockout. And that's kind of been like the tale of Ottman's game, or at least his resume. He has had 12 victories, 8 of them coming by first round stoppage. He's had one of them to win via decision, and then he had a second round or third round KO against Alejandro Martinez, where he had a beautiful body kick where it pretty much just hit the right on the liver. We saw Alejandro pretty much drop and tap immediately. Like, it's not often that you see a guy tap to a liver kick. Like, he tries to cover it up as best as possible and tries to get out of there. But Martinez, he was 3-0 going into that fight, so still relatively young in his MMA career, and he just could not handle that pain at all. So solid win for Ottman there. It seemed like if he was going up against a more, veteran savvy opponent, those second and third rounds could be a little bit crazier, or at least a little bit closer, I should say. Ottman, he comes on that first round and he always looks to take your hat off. He doesn't spend himself in terms of like completely gassing himself out in that first round, hoping for that KO, but that's where he is most dangerous. It can get a little bit sketchy for him in the second and third round against appropriate opposition. But with Khama Worthy, on the other hand, the guy is mainly a counter puncher or a counter striker. If you watch the Luis Pena fight, he's mainly waiting for those openings that Pena gives him, and then he starts launching that right hand. He uses his left hand to kind of gauge the distance and kind of throw some feints out there, but it's really the right hand that he's looking to throw. And if he's not able to land it, he could easily lose a decision if he's not, active enough. He throws some kicks here and there, but it's just not enough, in my opinion. Obviously having forward pressure and forward movement helps a little bit, but there are questions that can be given to Khama if he's fighting a guy with a more complete game plan. I think Ottman has a little bit more tools in the shed where he's able to, not just rely on a counter strike or on one punch. He throws in a couple combinations, likes his leg kicks as well too, but he's mainly a puncher. He's a power puncher at that. This should be a fun fight. I just don't know whether it's going to go over or under 1 round. I think the best spot for Ottman would be a round 1 KO, and him to win inside round 1 is plus 350. And that's kind of my favorite prop here. I'm still not a Khama worthy believer. You know what I mean? I did fade him heavy last time with Luis Pena, and that was my bad in terms of thinking that Luis Pena was a little bit further ahead. Yet here he goes and loses via one-armed guillotine in the third round when he's inside control. Up against the cage, call it. It was a weird type of positioning, but man, you should not be losing via guillotine like that at this type of level. So, unfortunate loss for him there. But yeah, Khama worthy. I'm still not a believer. The fact that he's a minus 135 favorite here. A part of me wants to fade him once again, but I don't know if Ottman is the guy. You know, Ottman does have some potential. I still need to see more from him. Even if he goes out there and knocks out Khama worthy in the first round, I still need to see more from him. I need to see more from him against like higher level of competition. Khama, he's on a roll right now, and a lot of people are on him. And a part of me hopes that he goes out there and starches Ottman so that we can get a better price to fade him in his next fight. So I will go with Ottman to win this. I think that he will be a little bit more active in that first round. I think he'll be able to draw out the counters of Khama worthy and then follow up with a counter of his own to be able to, put him out and get the victory that way. So I'm not a Khama worthy believer. I still am not, even though I lost a good chunk of money betting against him last time at super juiced odds as well, albeit with Luis Pena. But, Ottman Azaitar, I'm a little bit skeptical to bet him at plus money right now. If you give me plus 150 or plus 180, I'd probably take the shot. But plus 115, plus 120 is a little bit, not worthy enough. I hope you guys were. I had to fit it in there, right? I had to fit in the worthy pun. Just had to do it. But either way, I'm going to go with Ottman to win this fight via first round KO. But. I could absolutely see it a situation where both guys don't land that knockout punch in that first round, and we see this drag on to the second or third round and a possible finish there. So if you are looking for a violence bet here, the best value in my opinion is Ottman Azaitar in first round at plus 350. Or I know it's a little bit juiced, minus 275 when the fight doesn't go to decision, because I do think that. They will find a finish at some point. Again, 1.5 is just not enough time for me. 2.5, I would definitely be betting the under, but I can't do it at this point. So, final prediction: Ottman Azaitar to win this fight via first round KO. Time for the main event. We got Angela Hill versus Michelle Waterson. This should be a decent fight. You know what I mean? It's unfortunate that Glover Teixeira and Thiago Santos fell out. They get pushed to, I believe, October 3rd, and we're left with Michelle Waterson and Angela Hill. And luckily, at least they accept the fact that they're going to possibly be going 5 rounds, so they reschedule this thing from 3 rounds to 5 rounds. So the odds, we got minus 125, slight favorite for Angela Hill, plus 105 for Michelle Waterson. The over-under at 4.5. A lot of people are thinking that this is going to go over, which is why it's minus 280. So let's start off with Angela Hill, coming off a controversial decision loss to Claudia Gadelha last time around, but not that controversial. I believe we did a deciding splits on this, me and Tony, and we did actually give it to Gadelha because we thought that she had the better shots in that third round. Obviously, first round going to Claudia, second round going to Hill, and then third round we thought went to Gadelha. The masses on MMA decisions definitely did not think that, as they thought that Angela Hill deserved to win that decision. Again, this is not a deciding splits episode, so I'm not going to go into why we think that Claudia won that fight. But yeah, Hill does have fights where she fights closely. You know what I mean? She does have a couple of split decisions on her record. One thing that she always seems to rely on a lot is her output and her activity. There doesn't seem to be a lot of stinging shots or like power behind the shots that she's throwing, but she's throwing volume. She's throwing output. And if you look at her UFC stats page, you'll see that there are a couple times where she's hit the 100 strikes mark. And it's evident with her style. Like she moves a lot, likes to throw in combinations, likes to end them with kicks, but she doesn't throw much behind them. which seems to give her that like cardio edge in some of her fights because she's just not throwing enough behind her shots, so she's able to conserve her energy for the full 15 or 25 minutes. Speaking of 25 minutes, this is going to be her third time being scheduled for a 25-minute fight, whereas this is going to be the sixth time that Michelle Waterson has been scheduled for 5 rounds. So you got to give the championship rounds, or at least the training camps, edge to Michelle Waterson. Not to mention the camp she's at over there at Jackson's. She's been around for a long time. She's a veteran of the game. Even though, what's this? So Waterson has this is going to be her 26th fight, and this will be the 21st fight for Angela Hill. So Waterson has a little bit of an edge in terms of total amounts of fights. Waterson did go pro in 2007, while Angela Hill went pro in 2014. So she has about a 7-year pro advantage on her, and she has over 8 fights more than her as well too. But Michelle Waterson, former Invicta champ, Angela Hill, former Invicta champ as well too. Who's had the more? I'd say Angela Hill has had the more, like, overall. I don't know. It's tough to say better UFC career considering the fact that Michelle Waterson, her losses are to Rose Namajunas, Tisha Torres, Ioana Jędrzejczyk, and a split decision to Carla Esparza. Close fights, you know what I mean? And high level opponents too. But she has beaten Paige Van Zandt. She's beaten Courtney Casey, Felice Herg, and Karolina Kovalkovich. And now here she is against Angela Hill. Even though she's nicknamed the Karate Hottie, you can't just expect, karate kicks or like a karate stance or that type of striking from her strictly. You know what I mean? She has an overall MMA game. She's really good. She has sneaky good takedowns. She has solid submissions. She does have a couple of submission victories on her record as well too. Angela Hill, mainly a point fighter on the feet. People can say what they want about her making strides in her grappling because she went out there and ground and pounded Hannah Cyphers, but let's not forget that she went out there and got armbarred by Orlando Marcos. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to shit on Randa Marcos or anything like that, but I truly believe that Michelle Waterson has the better jiu-jitsu than Randa Marcos. Marcos slightly bigger than Waterson as well too, so maybe there's a slight advantage in terms of strength there as well. But I think that technically Waterson is the better jiu-jitsu player. So I think if this fight does hit the ground, Waterson will definitely have the advantage. I'd be surprised to see Angela Hill go out there and try to get this fight to the ground. I do think that she believes, and the world believes, her best path to victory is just throwing more strikes than Michelle Waterson, and hopefully, having more forward movement and forward output compared to what Michelle Waterson is throwing in return. The concerning thing about Michelle Waterson is that, Carla Esparza looked kind of good on the feet against her, and that was kind of surprising because a lot of people thought that Carla's path to victory in that fight was to continuously get the fight to the ground and try to win that way. But she stayed competitive on the feet. I truly thought going into that fight that Waterson would blow her away on the feet, but that was not the case. So Michelle Waterson, I'm not sure if she's showing a little bit of regression or anything like that, but she's going to have to step up her game when it comes to the striking, because if she's not able to get it to the ground, which is a different story that I'll touch on very soon. Angela Hill is going to have a little bit of a field day on the feet in terms of just throwing output, getting in and out, and just scoring points in that aspect. In terms of the metrics of their physique, we got 5'3", 64.5-inch reach for Angela Hill, and then we got 5'3", 62-inch reach for Michelle Waterson. And part of me feels like Angela Hill would have a slight height advantage here, but I guess we'll wait and see when they actually face off at the weigh-ins what it looks like. But Waterson moves well, kicks well, so it doesn't mean too much in terms of if there is an actual size advantage for Angela Hill, because I feel like the kicks of Waterson, cover range pretty well too. Her karate background does very well for her in terms of moving in and out of distance. But I think it's going to come down to her mixing in her karate stances and her kicks and her striking with the takedowns. I think that's where she truly starts to separate herself in this fight. A lot of people are hot on Angela Hill right now just because of she has this character right now where she's just going out there and just trying to get as many fights as possible. In 2019, she went out there and got 4 fights. In 2020 now, this is going to be her 4th fight since January 25th. You know what I mean? She's just building up this fan base, and I feel like that's reflecting on the betting line a little bit, because I feel like Michelle Waterson is definitely the better fighter. My concern in terms of wanting to bet Michelle Waterson here is just the performance that we got from her in the Carla Esparza fight. People can call it a robbery if they want in terms of whether Carla Esparza deserved that victory or not, but we can all admit that we did expect to see a better Michelle Waterson, especially with that fight taking place mainly on the feet outside of the ending of that first round. So that's a little bit of a concern. But if we do get like vintage Michelle Waterson, where she looks good, her kicks look good, her output looks fine, and she's able to mix in the takedowns, I think she definitely has the advantage here against Angela Hill. And in terms of age, they're the same age, so you can't really say that one fighter is going to have an age or a youth advantage here. They're the same. If anything, Michelle Waterson just has a little bit more experience on her belt. So I'm gonna go with Michelle Waterson here. I think that she will be successful in getting this fight to the ground. At least once a round, and at a certain point, whether it's the third or fourth round, I think we see her go out there and get a submission. I'm still questioning Angela Hill's grappling and jiu-jitsu game. So I do think that we'll see Waterson go out there and be successful in locking up an arm bar or a triangle choke or a rear naked choke of some sort. But I do like Waterson here. I'd like to monitor the line. I'd like to see if it does get a little bit wider, because plus 105 is just not intriguing enough for me. If there is more love that comes in on Angela Hill, I might change my stance and take a shot on Michelle Waterson, depending on if we get like plus 130 or something like that. But I highly, highly, highly doubt that. Waterson inside the distance, though, plus 400, not too bad. Waterson by submission, plus 540. Not bad either, so possibly worth a little bit of a poke there. But I'm taking Waterson to win this fight via submission. I'm going to call it fourth round, maybe fifth round. It's been tough in terms of picking exact rounds lately, so I'll say either third or fourth round, maybe fifth round. Fuck it. That's it. You know what? All right. Final decision, fourth round submission for Michelle Waterson. All right. That's the breakdowns. I appreciate you guys being patient this week with me getting this content out. It's kind of good that my podcast got pushed back a little bit just due to the late addition of Romanov and Martinez and, Jalin Turner stepping in for Frank Camacho. I'm sure, just given, the trend of the last couple weeks, that there might be a weigh-in day or fight day, late edition or somebody dropping out, whatever the fuck. Regardless, I'm just happy to get this out for you guys. So I appreciate you guys and hope you guys watch it. If you haven't subscribed already, make sure you guys hit subscribe below. We've hit that 1,000 subscriber mark. It's been a couple weeks now, but I'm still ecstatic about it. Super happy that I was able to achieve that milestone. And hit up the Patreon as well. Hit another milestone as well. Over 100 patrons over there. A lot of people are getting really good value for their money. It's only $5 a month. And then if I win you some money and you want to be a little bit more generous, you can hop on the $10 a month just to throw your boy a little bit extra. But yeah, it's been great over there. People getting early breakdowns. People getting the best bets and props article, which has been cashing very nicely as well the last couple weeks. So I appreciate you guys checking that shit out. That's the best way to support your boy. Check out the Patreon. It's going to be in the comment section below. And don't forget, like I said at the top of the show, I do have that sweater contest. So make sure you guys comment below. If you listen to the audio version of this on, fucking Stitcher, Spotify, or iTunes or SoundCloud, go over to the YouTube video and comment all your picks for this weekend's card, and I'll hopefully be able to come down to a winner for this sweater. So, yeah. All right, that's it for me. I'm going to get right to work on the following weekend's card, which is headlined by... What is it headlined by? Let me just check that real quick. Covington and Woodley. Can't wait to break down that card for you guys because I have a lot of strong leans on there, and I can't wait to actually dissect it and get into it for you guys. So, yeah, I'll see you guys next week for that card. Once again, subscribe, like, hit up the Patreon, and I'll see you guys next week.